Let's be honest, you've sensed it before. That moment when she tells you, "I'm fine," but everything in her eyes screams the exact opposite. Your gut twists because deep down you know something's off, but you stay silent. Not because you don't care, but because nobody ever taught you how to interpret what she truly means. And what if you're wrong? What if speaking up only pushes her further away? You convince yourself to play it cool, but silence becomes distance, and distance becomes regret. Right now, you're not just watching this video, you're confronting every time you believed her words while ignoring what your instincts tried to reveal. Women don't lie to be cruel. Most lies they tell men are not malicious. They are protective, strategic, emotional survival mechanisms. They lie because they fear being judged, abandoned, or seen as weak. And you hear the words, but you don't hear the fear behind them. That's the gap. That's what today is about. Because if you don't understand the psychology beneath her words, you'll always react to what she says instead of what she means. And that's why good men lose great women and strong men get emotionally drained by manipulative ones. The difference isn't strength, it's awareness. See, women rarely communicate in absolutes. They test, hint, retreat, and reveal slowly. When she says, "I don't care," it often means I care deeply, but I don't feel safe enough to show it. When she says, "Do whatever you want," it usually means I'm watching how much you value me before I become vulnerable with you. The lie isn't about deception, it's about protection. But here's the painful truth. Men take the words literally. Women expect you to read between them. That disconnect destroys connection. You were conditioned to solve problems head-on. She was conditioned to protect emotions quietly. You believe honesty is clarity. She believes honesty is risk. So she hides her truest feelings behind strategic phrases while hoping you see through them. And when you don't, she says you don't care. And suddenly, you're standing in front of the woman you love, being blamed for a conversation she never allowed you to have. Right now, you feel that knot tightening in your chest because part of you knows it's true. You remember the arguments where you tried logic, and she responded emotionally. You remember walking away confused, thinking, why didn't she just say what she means? Because vulnerability terrifies her more than losing you. That's the psychology most men miss. You're not weak for not knowing. You're human. And today, you're stepping into knowledge most men don't have access to. By the time this video ends, you'll understand the 6 most common lies women tell men, not to manipulate, but to express emotions they're too afraid to speak out loud. And once you understand that code, you don't just get better at relationships. You become the kind of man she doesn't lie to anymore, not because she suddenly changed. When a woman says, "It's not a big deal," it often means it's the biggest deal she's been trying to suppress. She downplays it because she's terrified that if she shows how deeply it affects her, you'll pull away or call her dramatic. She thinks that minimizing her emotions will make her easier to love. Meanwhile, you take her words at face value, believing you're respecting her boundaries. In reality, the moment you walk away, convinced everything is fine, she silently concludes that you didn't care enough to stay and dig deeper. That's the emotional split that drives 2 people apart while thinking they're keeping the peace. Most men assume the right move is to avoid conflict, but in her psychology, avoiding conflict often feels like avoiding her. She doesn't want you to fix everything instantly. She wants to feel that her emotions matter to you even when they're messy, irrational, or hard to understand. What she's really saying behind that lie is, "I'm afraid this matters more to me than it does to you." She's testing if your connection is strong enough to hold her truth without judgment. The problem is, most men wait for logical, clearly stated concerns before responding. But female emotional communication doesn't follow logic. It follows fear and desire. Think about it. She remembers how her vulnerability was dismissed in the past, maybe by an ex, maybe by her father, maybe by society telling her she's too sensitive. Every time you show her that you can't see through the cover, she files it away as another moment that proves showing her true feelings is dangerous. And over time, she doesn't stop feeling, she just stops sharing. That's how emotional disconnection begins, not with screaming arguments, but with quiet withdrawal wrapped in casual phrases. Here's what most men don't realize. The moment she says, "It's not a big deal," she's watching what you do more than what you say. If you let it go instantly, she sees it as pressure to stay silent. If you calmly say, "I hear you, but I also feel like something's weighing on you. I'm not going anywhere if you want to talk," she feels seen without being cornered. That's emotional leadership, and that's what she craves from a man who claims to love her. This doesn't make her weak. It makes her cautious, and caution is usually born from past pain. When her words minimize what her heart can't ignore, you're faced with a choice: engage or retreat. The men who retreat may look peaceful, but lose her slowly. The men who learn to engage gently earn a level of emotional trust that most never access. If you've ever felt confused by her reactions, when little things turned into major explosions, it's usually because her small lie, "It's no big deal," was ignored too many times. And when unspoken pain stays bottled up, it eventually erupts. Today, you're learning to catch the pain before it turns into fire. When she tells you, "I don't need anything," what she usually means is, "I'm afraid to need you, because if you don't respond the way I hope, it will confirm my fear that I'm alone." Men hear independence. Women intend protection. You assume she wants space, yet she's silently begging for emotional presence. Not gifts, not grand gestures, just reassurance that needing you won't lead to disappointment. That lie is rooted in survival. She learned that expectations lead to letdowns, so she lowers her demands, not because she doesn't have them, but because she believes you won't meet them. And every time you accept her words literally, you unknowingly validate her fear. Think of the times she said she was okay with whatever. No plans needed for her birthday. No attention necessary when she was upset. No support required during tough days. You admired her strength. But behind that performance of strength often lies exhaustion. She doesn't want to appear needy because somewhere in her past, being needy was either punished or ignored. She believes that if she can convince you she requires nothing, she'll be easier to love, easier to keep. But here's what she really wants: a man perceptive enough to notice what she hesitates to ask for. This is where many men fail, not because they don't care, but because they wait for clear instruction. But emotional connection isn't built on clear instruction. It's built on attentive intuition. You don't need to read her mind, you need to read her energy. When she says she needs nothing but seems distant, that's not a sign to back off. It's a signal she's afraid to ask for closeness. Offer it without making her feel guilty for wanting it. A simple gesture, a calm conversation, a moment of warm, undivided attention. Those are the things she wanted but never requested. And here's the most powerful truth. A woman's desire to feel chosen without asking is one of the deepest psychological needs in relationships. If she has to instruct you to care, she feels cared for out of obligation, not devotion. She'll say she doesn't need anything because what she truly longs for can't be demanded. It must be given willingly. When you begin showing care before she asks, something profound shifts. The guard she's kept up begins to lower. The lie, "I don't need anything," evolves into emotional softening. She starts sharing her desires more openly. She trusts you with her vulnerability. That's not weakness. It's depth. And the men who meet that moment with presence experience a bond that many chase but few understand. But if you continue believing her words without seeing the walls behind them, you'll eventually hear another phrase: "I stopped asking because it didn't matter." And by the time those words are spoken, emotional damage is already built. Real strength isn't responding when she begs, it's noticing before she has to. When a woman says, "I'm not mad," she's rarely telling you the truth. What she truly means is, "I'm hurt, but I'd rather swallow the pain than risk a reaction that makes it worse." Anger is often just pain wearing armor, and when she denies it, she's not trying to deceive you, she's trying to protect herself from the shame of caring too deeply. Men hear, "Everything's okay," Women are silently thinking, if I admit how much this affected me, you might minimize it or walk away. So she hides it. She goes quiet. She distracts herself with her phone, her work, or forced calmness. Yet her silence screams louder than any argument ever could. Here's what most men misunderstand. She doesn't want you to back off. She wants you to lean in without attacking. She fears that expressing hurt will start a conflict, so she denies the emotion completely. But when a man responds with emotional maturity, calmly acknowledging the disconnect without pushing, he becomes someone she feels safe with. And emotional safety is the foundation of desire, loyalty, and long-term connection. Think about past moments. She withdrew after something you said or did, but instead of addressing it, you gave her space, assuming that was the right move. You thought silence would allow tension to fade. Instead, it allowed resentment to grow. You believed peace meant avoiding escalation. She believed peace meant confronting pain before it becomes distance. That's why couples drift apart while pretending everything's fine. When she says she isn't mad, but her energy shifts, she becomes colder, shorter in conversation, slightly detached. That emotional withdrawal is a test, not of loyalty, but of emotional awareness. If you respond with defensiveness, the pain deepens. If you respond with avoidance, the gap widens. But if you say, I know you said you're not mad, and I respect that, but I care about how you feel, and I sense this affected you. We don't have to argue, just talk. I'm here. She feels seen without pressure. Most men underestimate how powerful emotional containment is. A woman doesn't fall for a man who avoids difficult moments. She falls for the one who remains calm in emotional storms, not by shutting down, but by leaning in with presence. The lie, I'm not mad, isn't an escape from the truth. It's an invitation for the man to show emotional intelligence before she risks vulnerability. And here's something deeply psychological. When you respond gently to her unspoken hurt, you don't just resolve tension, you reverse years of emotional conditioning that taught her vulnerability leads to rejection. That kind of connection builds trust so strong it becomes attraction. She doesn't want you to fix her emotions. She wants you to stand beside her while she feels them. When she claims she's not mad, don't listen to the words. Listen to the pause, the heaviness, the part of her that's waiting to feel safe enough to be honest. When a woman says, I'm okay with whoever you talk to, what she really means is, I'm watching to see if I still matter when other options are present. That statement isn't indifference. It's quiet insecurity layered under forced confidence. She tells you she trusts you, not because she fully does, but because she doesn't want to appear jealous or controlling. She wants to believe she's secure, but inside she wonders if she's losing significance in your life. And each time you brush off her subtle tension or dismiss her concern, she interprets it not as evidence of your loyalty, but as proof that she's slowly becoming replaceable. It's not about her trying to control you, it's about her needing reassurance that connection with you isn't fragile. When she notices you give attention to other women, whether casually on social media, through unexpected messages, she doesn't always speak directly. Instead, she acts cool. And that calmness isn't peace, it's emotional defense. She's thinking, if I show my discomfort, he'll say, I'm overreacting. If I stay silent, maybe he'll choose me willingly. Women want to be chosen without begging to be chosen. When they feel like they have to compete for closeness, they don't always fight, they often pull away. Here's the truth most men don't realize. A woman's jealousy isn't about ownership. It's about fear of emotional replacement. She doesn't want to restrict your freedom, but she also doesn't want to feel like a temporary option. So instead of saying, this bothers me, she pretends it doesn't, but her energy changes. Her tone shifts, conversations shorten, and she becomes distant. That withdrawal is not revenge. It's heartbreak, quietly starting. The worst mistake many men make is defending themselves before comforting her. They respond with logic, you know I'd never do anything, or you're being paranoid. But her concern isn't logical, it's emotional. What she's really seeking is reassurance, not argument. Try responding with presence, not defensiveness. A gentle statement like, I'm with you because I want you. If something ever makes you feel unsure, I'd rather know than pretend everything's fine. Builds trust instead of conflict. When she lies about being okay with what unsettles her, she's testing if your attention is dependable, even when she pretends not to need it. If you believe the lie and ignore the signal, she won't explode. She'll adapt by caring less. And when a woman begins to care less, she may not fight for you anymore, even if she still loves you. This lie is not manipulation, it's fear dressed as strength. She's trying not to suffocate your freedom while silently suffocating on her own doubt. And when a man understands that, without shaming her, he becomes rare. Because the truth is, a woman doesn't want to win your attention. She wants to feel like she never had to compete for it. When she says she's okay with what unsettles her, she's hoping you're emotionally mature enough to notice before she stops hoping at all. This final lie isn't about testing you, it's a surrender. She believes that continuing to express her truth leads nowhere, so she convinces herself to detach. Men often mistake that moment as her losing interest. In reality, it's her losing hope. And this is the most dangerous point in a relationship, not when she's arguing, not when she's emotional, but when she becomes calm, composed, and emotionally unavailable. Because that calmness isn't peace. It's closure. Here's what many men never understand. When a woman stops reacting, she has already rewritten the ending in her mind. She no longer fights for connection because she no longer believes the connection is possible, and yet beneath those words remains a small part of her pleading, give me a reason to care again, show me I was wrong about giving up. But she will never ask for that directly, because by the time she utters, I don't care anymore, she has been hurt repeatedly for caring too much. If you've ever experienced that phrase from someone you loved, you know how cold it feels. It's because she's no longer speaking from emotion, she's speaking from self-preservation. But here's where strong, emotionally intelligent men stand apart. Not by debating her statement, not by forcing her to open up, but by understanding what lies beneath it. By responding with patience, reflection, and consistent presence. Because at that point, words alone won't fix the damage, your actions will. If you sense a woman you value is nearing that emotional shutdown, don't wait for clarity. Step in with sincerity. Acknowledge the disconnection without blame. Say something like, I know something shifted and I take responsibility for missing it. If there's still a chance to reconnect, I'm here to rebuild, not just talk. Not manipulation, not pressure, just genuine emotional accountability. That's what reignites care. The deepest truth is this. Women lie not because they want to mislead, but because vulnerability feels unsafe. And men often fail, not because they don't love her, but because they don't decode the unspoken. When understanding replaces defensiveness, connection replaces distance. If you want to build a relationship where she tells the truth, create one where her truth is safe. Now let me ask you something personal. Have you ever heard one of these lies from a woman you cared about and only understood her truth when it was too late? Share your experience in the comments. If this spoke to you today, like the video, subscribe, and share it with a man who needs to hear this now.